Why did you leave your last job? Okay, this is something I've seen recently, and it's a question that's likely to pop up in an interview. And here in the UK, there are, I think, basically four main ways that you can leave your last job. One is to retire, so pretty much what are you doing in an interview? The other is to be made redundant, to walk out of the job, to leave the job, or to be fired. How do you approach these questions in an interview? If you've been made redundant, then absolutely nothing to worry about. You've been made redundant, it's not your fault. It's clear. Just mention it in the interview, move on. If you walked out of a job and if you were fired, it becomes a little bit more difficult and it becomes a little bit more complicated to approach and how you respond to that. Now, I saw saw a video earlier on which said pretty much to not be 100% truthful, that you could dress up the reasons that you left the job because being fired or walking out are potential red flags. Now, 100% they're potential red flags. But having experienced both walking out of jobs and being fired, I take a slightly different angle on that, in that I've seen it from an employee's point of view, where you have sound reasons for walking out of a job. And as long as you can justify the reasons why you walked out of a job, then I'd be happy talking about it. Now, the advice that I saw on the video was that you cover it up, you don't talk about it, you say that you were let go. Now, in the UK, this is a sackable offence, same as lying on a CV. If you are not honest, if you are not truthful, you can be sacked. So it's quite a serious thing to do, is to lie in an interview, and that's what we don't do. And this is why, one of the reasons why I would suggest that you get together with a coach so you can talk about it and work out a strategy of how you approach it, how you approach the response. Talk honestly, talk openly, but you don't lie. And as I said, I have experience of both situations, and I would say even the sacking wasn't my fault. I technically didn't do anything wrong. That it was what was probably commonly be called constructive dismissal, but it was a sacking. I had a strategy for the period after that I was taken out of the job, which then fitted into my CV perfectly. So I now had a reason for leaving the job, which wasn't the sacking, but that's neither here nor there. That's just looking at the way of how we frame it to approach the interview and give the information. As I say, you are honest in the interview, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky and a little bit difficult. So, for example, if you look at someone like any major manufacturer, they give you the features and the benefits. And we know with most products there's going to be a drawback. What they don't do is tell you that drawback. And when they're giving you the features and the benefits, but they're not telling you about the problems, are they lying to you? So when you're approaching the interview, you can give them all your features and your benefits, but you can withhold some of the information that you think is important or could affect you negatively. But you're not lying. And this applies to walking out of the job when you haven't got another job to go to, or being fired. Now, I look at those and I would say that if the reason that the question is being asked is because there's a belief that past behaviour is an indicator of future behaviour. That's to say that if you were fired from the last job, then there's a greater chance that you're going to be fired from the future job. So they're looking to say, do we really want to employ a person who might get fired from this job? My view is, if a company is thinking like that, do I really want to work for them? If they don't want to dig down and find the reasons and talk like adults, do I really want to work for that company? And of course, this is dependent on situations that if there's an absolute need to get a job, then yes, you can't make that decision that if you don't like what they're saying, you can reject the job. It's obviously a lot easier if you're currently in a job and you've got the luxury of picking and choosing who your next employer is. And I've just had that with someone who is in their current job. They had an interview with a company that they thought they wanted to work for. It's a prestigious company, global name, huge opportunity, but there were red flags in the interview. And when I say red flags, it was red flags from the employer. And he's now having second thoughts about whether he wants to work for that company. So it's a two-way process. So definitively, you are asked why did you leave your last job? Best position is you're currently in a job, so that's not a question. Why do you want to join us is the question. If you're out of work, then there really are the three possibilities. Redundant, not a problem. Fired or walked out into nothing, these are a little bit more problematic. Now, I would suggest that it's not a simple answer to give you over the internet. It needs a lot more personal contact to find the backstory, to find why, because I know and I understand that if you're fired or you walked out of a job because you had nothing to go to, there's a lot more going on. If the employer that you're being interviewed for doesn't understand that, do you want to work for them? If you want to go into a little bit more of a deeper dive with it, drop me a message below. Get in contact with me at think180.co.uk. We can have a chat about it and we can see where we go from there. Okay, enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you. Bye bye.